It's taken me over a week to record this video, and I think it's no coincidence. Hey, my name is Natasha, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, welcome to my channel. And like I said previously, it's taken me over a week to record this video, and it is no coincidence since what I'm talking about is distractions and how distractions can lead you to sin unknowingly. Now, everybody knows the story of, no, not everyone. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is about Nehemiah. And was Nehemiah rebuilt the Jerusalem wall that had been torn down in 52 days. And every time I hear someone talk about that passage of the Bible, that book of the Bible, they often, or I haven't heard it, overlook the number of times that Nehemiah faced opposition all around. So much to the point that during one period, while they are rebuilding the wall, the people who are rebuilding the wall, the men who are rebuilding the wall with him, they have they are rebuilding the wall and they are tired. They are working tirelessly and they are receiving so much opposition from the from what is it, Sambalat, Tobiah, and Geshem, because they did not want the wall to be rebuilt, because the wall being rebuilt would mean that the Israelites would, first of all, they would not have the shame behind living in their city with a wall that's demolished. And second, if the wall is rebuilt, they can be self-sufficient. So at one point, the men who are rebuilding the wall, they are rebuilding the wall with a sword in their hand, while one hand, imagine this, one hand they have a sword, the other hand they are rebuilding the wall. So they are rebuilding the wall with one hand, not knowing when or if they are going to be attacked. Now, so there is Sambalat, who is an enemy of Nehemiah because he's rebuilding the wall. He sends messengers to Nehemiah to try to get him to come down and meet with him. Now, if you are, what is the word? Now, because Nehemiah was committed. Now, Nehemiah was committed to his task of rebuilding the wall, so much so that he could not be persuaded to come down. So even on that fourth time, he said, I cannot come down from rebuilding this wall. Let me read the Bible. Let me read this. Let's get this together. Mind you, this is fresh. I have this, but this is when I recorded it and it didn't work. And let me go back to say that when I recorded, and this is a part of the distraction, when I originally recorded this, I don't even want to talk about that. Wait a minute. Got the wrong thing. Nehemiah. Esther, Nehemiah, Ezra, Nehemiah. All right. So, but they sent me this message. No, let me go back. So, after Sambalot, his enemy, continuously sends messengers inviting Nehemiah to meet with him, Nehemiah ignored him. And the fourth time, here's what Nehemiah says. So I sent messengers to them saying, I am doing a great work so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease while I leave it and go down to you? You see, this entire time that Sambalot is sending messengers, it's more than opposition. These are distractions to interfere with what God placed in Nehemiah's heart to rebuild the wall. Now, I don't want you to miss the fact that this says, why should I am doing a great work? And sometimes, many times, we look at whatever it is that something that is that God has placed in our heart, and we may not think that it is a great work like Nehemiah rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem. It could be as simple as a simple act of kindness that God has placed in your heart to do towards someone in your family, someone who you may not particularly like. But when God sends you the Holy Spirit to give you an unction to do something, it is great because it is from God. And sometimes those distractions are as simple as doubt. Simple as doubt. Also, it could be you overthinking it, you questioning, why would I do something kind for somebody that I don't like? Let me go back. Okay. So when he did not come down the fourth time, Sambalot sent someone a fifth time to say that it is reported among the nations, and Geshem says that you and the Jews plan to rebel. Therefore, according to these rumors, you are rebuilding the wall that you may be their king. And you have also appointed prophets to proclaim concerning you at Jerusalem, saying, there is a king in Judah. Now these matters will be reported to the king. So come, therefore, and let us consult together. Whatever it is that God places in your heart, you have to be so committed to it versus the distractions, versus the intimidation, versus the consequences of not following your own way, not following other people's opinions, not following other people's perceptions and what they may think about what it is that you are doing. Let me go here. Okay. So then I sent to him, saying, no such things as you say are being done, but you invent them in your heart. How did he know that they invented him? How did Nehemiah know? How would he know? He would know because he has the gift of the Holy Spirit. We have to be able to discern when a distraction comes in the form of people, comes in the form of a thought, comes in the form of the device that you may be holding in your hand right now to watch this. We have to have the gift of discernment and be in tune with the Holy Spirit so that we will know when the good thing that God has called us to do is being hijacked or attempted to be hijacked by a distraction. And you have to be able to recognize that distraction. I'm going to keep going. So, and I talked about your distractions being a sin. Here we go. Okay. So, after Shemaiah, I believe, is it Shemaiah? Okay, let me go back. Let's go back. Let's go back. Yes, Shemaiah. So, Shemaiah comes and tries to convince, persuade, encourage, and also discourage Nehemiah from continuing to rebuild the wall. And he says, let us meet together in the house of God within the temple, and let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. Indeed, at night they will come to kill you. And I said, should such a man as I flee? And who is there, such as I, who would go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in. Then I perceived that God had not sent him at all, but that he had pronounced this prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. For this reason he was hired, that I should be afraid and act that way and sin, so that they might have cause for an evil report, that they might reproach me. I want to go back and read this. For this reason, he was hired, that I might be afraid and act that way and sin. What is the sin? The sin would be allowing Sambalot and Tobias intimidation tactics, and continuously sending messengers to try to persuade Nehemiah to stop rebuilding the wall, to instill fear, so much fear in Nehemiah that he stops, because it would be sin, because God has placed this good thing in Nehemiah's heart to do. When you don't do the good thing that God calls you to do, then it is sin. Now, let me clarify, it is not sin to everyone, but it is sin to you. I want to read this. This is not in the way. So, James 4:17. James 4:17. So, how is a distraction a sin? Not everybody's distraction is a sin, but If that distraction is keeping you from doing a good thing, then it becomes a sin to you. James 4:17. Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. Now, let me read this. So, if there is a good thing that you feel that God has placed on your heart to do and you don't do it, then it's sin. Sin is not just, I want to read this to you. James 4, oh, thank you, Holy Spirit. Okay. We tend to think that doing wrong is sin, but James tells us that sin is also not doing right. These two kinds of sins are sometimes called sins of commission and sins of omission. It is a sin to lie. It can also be a sin to know the truth and not tell it. It is a sin to speak evil of someone. It is also a sin to avoid him when you know he needs your friendship. We should be willing to help as the Holy Spirit guides us. If God has directed you to do some kind act to do, some service to render, or some relationship to restore, do it, and you will experience a renewed and refreshed vitality to your Christian faith. So, there are some sins that are obvious that God calls sin, but there are some sins that are specific to individuals. So sometimes we can feel convicted by a thing, an act, because that is something that God has placed in our heart that we should be doing. But we can't go and assume that someone else should also be doing that same good act because the Holy Spirit has not placed that conviction on them. I remember this was decades ago. I was in a store and I look over and I hear this woman call out. She says, "Can someone come and help my mother?" I look over and I see this younger lady. She had long dark hair, younger lady, and she is standing over this lady who is passed out unconscious on the ground. And she calls out and several times she says, "Can somebody come and help my mother?" And in that moment, I stopped and I felt, I asked myself, I said, should I go over and pray? I didn't know CPR, and prayer was the help that came to me immediately. So as I'm standing there and I'm thinking, all of these thoughts are ruminating. I'm ruminating all of these thoughts. What if they don't believe? What if they aren't believers? What if they reject my prayer? What if all of these what ifs that I thought about, and I don't know how much time passed, but eventually I allowed the thoughts, the doubts, and I wouldn't say fear, it was the thoughts and the doubts to overtake me. And I eventually left and I did not pray. And I have since repented of that because now I know that that was sin. Because why would I think the first thought that I would be to go over and pray and then I don't? You see, that is how the 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 enemy gets us to sin even unknowingly by scrolling away our lives when there is something God placed in our heart that is good that we should be doing instead of being consumed by consuming social media, or giving money to someone who is standing on the corner, yet you're thinking, oh, they should get a job. Why don't they get a job? But something in you says, well, maybe I should. But then you think to yourself, oh, they should work like I do. So the next time you find yourself overthinking, you find yourself doubting, you find yourself doom scrolling social media, you find yourself binge watching Netflix or whatever it is that you watch, ask God for discernment and to send you the Holy Spirit to recognize, to help you recognize when you are allowing your distractions, distracted thoughts, distracted environments, distracted by people, to get in the way of you doing the good thing that God has placed in your heart. I hope that encouraged you and blessed you in some way. And if that did, hit like and subscribe, and also share it with someone who may be struggling with distractions themselves, because today's world is so highly distracted with everything that's going on in the world and even in your own environment. So I'll see you next time.